And we are live, family. What's up? What's up? Welcome, welcome. JMMB Goal Getter live. Lux, I'm so happy to see a long time is when last I was here. I think it's like July, right? July. It's been a great few months. Yeah, getting a little off-air break. Don't worry, even though you don't see me on camera, I'm still working in the background, right? But it's great to be back here tonight for what is going to be another awesome episode. Where are my people? Come on, guys. You know me love when I light up the comments, right? Where are my regular people? My new people, you know the drill, right? Drop a comment. Let me know where you're watching us from, what you're looking forward to tonight, because this is going to be another fantastic episode of JMMB Goal Getter Live. If you saw the flyers going around on social media and all about, I know there's quite a bit of hype about this conversation, so we're very, very happy to bring it to you tonight. And I'm the person that has been tasked to bring it to you, probably because this guest probably needs a little bit more management than others. Hey, Diane! Welcome, Diane, coming in from Facebook. Craig from Facebook, big up yourself, my brother. How is everybody? Let's deal with the white elephant in the room, right? Yes, Craig, all the way from Canada. Diane, where are you coming to us from? Is it Roku? You know, you guys have these weird handles, right? So forgive me if I'm mispronouncing anything. In the building, where you watching us from? Let us know. So let's just deal with the white elephant in the room, because people are like, how can JMMB even think? Yeah, we normally do Goal Getter Live 8:30 on a Tuesday night, but how could JMMB even think of doing a Goal Getter Live on what is the night of the results, the announcement of the results of the United States elections, right? What a serious thing going on here, people. Hey, Sophia, Ava, Richardo, what? Hi, Elena. How are you? Natalie, love it. Yes. Val from Florida. We love the international contingent. So everybody's like, so why JMMB doing this thing? So here what, guys? We know today's election, right? You know, the United States, unlike Jamaica, is a very predictable date for election for them. And this is a hotly contested election, right? I don't think anybody is ready to call it just yet. I don't know where it's at. So if y'all know what's going on, hit us up in the chat. But guess what, guys? Whether it's Trump win or Biden win, we know what will happen. United States bread still butter on all sides. Bread still butter, as I was saying to somebody today. They line them out at embassy when it's still long. Same way tomorrow morning, no matter who wins. So guess what? We are buttering our own bread tonight. That's what we're here to do. And hey, guys, if you can't catch us all on the live tonight, you know, we're going to be recording this. But hey, you have to call in your people them and tell them to come and watch. I love it. Hey, Ingrid, what's happening? Happy to be back. Hey, Steph, Ashley, love it. Yes, guys, drop us a comment and tell us where. So hear us now. So as you know, tonight we have an awesome guest. One guest, can only manage one of him. One guest by the name of Stuart Stimpson, right? And for those of you who are watching us, I think it was in the month of June, I feel like. Yes, there he is being pensive already. In the month of June, we had him on as part of a home ownership series where we kind of brought him on in his capacity as an attorney to give us advice. And the topic was 10 things that you did not know about owning your own property, your own home. And guys, if you remember, if you never catch the replay, people, you need to watch it, because he dropped the goods. He never give us 10 things. He gave us about 50 things. It was like 2 hours long. And it was our most viewed live JMMB Goal Getter live session ever, until Terry and Tammy come and start to talk about what women want. But it's all good. We love you, Terry and Tammy. I mean, you took over the #1 slot for the most viewed live. But Stuart then, up until that time, was a #1 live, you know, the second top rated live. And we want to break that record again tonight, because we're going to talk some things tonight, people. We're going to talk some things. Austin, what's up? Tamika, Dana, what's happening? Missed you too, Ingrid. Big Ray. What's up? So, guys, guess what we're talking about tonight? So, Stuart is going to be your attorney tonight, courtesy of JMMB, giving some nice general advice. Of course, anything Stuart says here, you still have to go and get your own advice. You know, just saying, right? Everybody has their own unique situation, but we're giving some great information and advice tonight, and we're gonna be talking some things. Them, hey, Eve from Portmore, we're going to be talking about deadlift, right? You know how it stays in Jamaica, deadlift. We're gonna be talking about spousal rights, those of us in common law unions versus marriage unions, things you need to be aware of, protecting yourself and your assets, your money, your property. You know that go. We're going to be talking about marriage and divorce, preparing for marriage, this thing called prenup, ouch, 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 issues. You know how it is, people. We're just going to keep it all the way real because JMMB has your best interest at heart, and we are here going to bring you some great information tonight that you can use. So guys, you know how it is. Text, WhatsApp, call, DM, share, tag anybody who needs to be here to hear this conversation tonight. Anybody going through any deadlift, them sort of things there, please tell them to log on. If you get their election results, just put it in the chat. It's all good. As I say, United States bread butter. We are buttering our bread in this live. Tonight, we're going to be talking about how you can protect yourself and your assets. Neil or Nile, I'm sorry, guys. Forgive me for not pronouncing the names well. I love it from Trinidad. Yes, Natalie. Big up to Mr. Stewart. Big up. All right. Yes, Elena, you got to check out that one. That one was the bomb. Yes, guys. So please continue to drop the comments. We love to hear from you, and we are going to get into it. So Stuart is an attorney at law, right? He is older than he looks. He is also has the privilege of being my husband, right? But that's not his biggest claim to fame, right? He's coming highly recommended, backed by popular demand, and has done this kind of talk in a few fora before. So we're happy to have him back with us here tonight. Of course, we are sheltering in place together. It's curfew, so he's upstairs, I'm downstairs. The kids are bound and gagged in bed. It's all good. Don't worry. We're ready for this conversation. No, they're not bound and gagged. They're just in bed sleeping. Hey, Paula, what's happening? So yes, Paula, this conversation is for you if you want to hear some good information. And again, guys, yes, Richardo, we are looking forward. So good evening, Stuart. Welcome back to JMMB Goal Getter Live. You're going to unmute. You're finding the button. Hi. There we go. Hi. Hey, what's up? Welcome, welcome. So we are going to put you to work again. Thanks for coming back. We really appreciate it. And we're going to kick off tonight's conversation with the ever popular topic called we call it deadlift, because unfortunately, a lot of Jamaicans go through a lot of struggle. Can I get an amen? A lot of struggle with things having to do with deadlift, when loved ones die and leave things either in order, not so much in order, in no order at all, and it can cause quite a bit of problem. So we're going to break it down, guys. And so this is not just for you in terms of how you need to get ready, but if you have a loved one or you're currently going through a situation, or you're considering, well, how do I put things in place to make sure that I don't cause no stress and aggravation, God forbid, after I pass. Hey, good night, Roger. That's what we're going to be going into. So when we talk about deadlift, Stuart, the first thing that comes up is the word a will. And a lot of us here in the chat, I know, and those of us watching, what is a will exactly? Break it down for us. And why is a will important?
All right, I carry on. A will is important, guys, because a will tells your intentions. It's a document that's prepared that highlights your wishes with instructions regarding how you want what you have to be shared for those you left behind. It also critically outlines wishes you may have in terms of how you want to be dealt with on your death, whether you want a funeral, you don't want a funeral, they must wear cheerful colors, the puss must come and sit at the front beside your mother, them kind of things. You know, from the obscure to the mundane, only hymns, no praise and worship. People have these kinds of things in their wills. It's important because, of course, when you leave, when you die, people will have their own idea of what they should do for you and what has happened. But guess what? You know, you won't be there. So it is a good way to get your affairs in order, particularly if you have family, or loved ones otherwise who you have taken care of and you want to make special provisions for. Because if you don't do it, what happens is the law has a method of determining how a will is to be, how your assets are to be divided. And if you die without a will, they call it what you call it, dying intestate. And there is a law in Jamaica that sets out what happens when you die without a will and the process and the order. So I think we'll go into discussing that. But you see, your specific question is, it's a document prepared in a particular way where you set out all your wishes, and it has to be witnessed by two people who are not beneficiaries under your will. And you'll indicate what you want to do, how you want assets to be divided, and who you leave in charge of those assets. Those people you call executors to your will. And you'd have to name and identify them as well on the document.
Question then, Stuart, because you talk, who really needs a will? Because, I mean, some people think, you know, me not really need to do a will until me lick about 50, which is probably closer to when I die. I mean, who should be thinking about doing a will, either for the first time or to update one, which I know can also be an issue?
All right. Well, let's start this way. If you have things to give anybody, when you die, there's going to be a problem. If you die without anything, then you may say to yourself, I need not have a will. But simple things can cause great problems after you die. Like, what should we do with you when you do pass? So I had the misfortune of, I hope I don't look it yet. I'm 42. And last year we buried a classmate of mine from high school. This guy would have been a serviceman. He served in the JDF for many years and died without a will. And challenge would have been his wishes as known to some of us versus what I think his mother would have been the person who dictated the state of affairs at the time. She had a particular idea. We knew that wasn't what he wanted or what he had expressed, but her wishes would have trumped what anybody had to say at a particular time. So your wishes can be violated if you don't have a document that indicates exactly what it is you want to do. It's more important, guys, for people who have children they want to create interest for. They want to provide, telling who you want to be the guardians of your children, because God forbid you're a single parent, as the case may be, or it's not uncommon for both parents to die at once in a car accident or something. You need to be very clear on what your intentions are. Who must take care of the children? Because it gives lawyers like me some if there's a court case about who must have custody. But you don't need to have those arguments and fights if you make the plans. So really what you're doing is you're preempting problems. And if you live a life that's like Errol Flynn, who may know Errol Flynn? You said Sean Connery died recently. Mr. Flynn was a lover of many women, many very different conquests. If you have a lot of mix up in your life and enough loving, a will is a good way to put the things in order, tell people who must get what, and make your plans so that those who share history with you can remember the good times. And if they're sour over what you've left them, too late, you're gone. But if you don't have it, you end up with Bob Marley's situation. Bob Marley was one of our prolific icons in Jamaica, who to this day, I believe up to recently, his estate is still in litigation in some respect. Many children, not all from the same woman, and just a battle over all his assets. Now, when Bob Marley would have died, his assets rivaled maybe some states in the world. But the point is, it doesn't change in size. It's a matter of the issues remain the same. How do you determine the assets and who should get what? Let's indicate a little more why it's important. There are two bits of legislation in Jamaica that kind of will throw you for a loop. One is, so the Interstate Estates and Property Charges Act sets out what should happen if you don't have a will. So if you don't have a will and you happen to be married or have a spouse for 5 years, you and her are both single at the time of your death and you live together for 5 years as man and wife, that spouse is able to get half of what you have, generally, and the rest of it is divided among your children. But your parents, for example, would have a fight. If you were providing for your parents, they'd have to go under another bit of legislation called the Inheritance Provision for Family and Dependents Act to be able to say, well, I must get a claim over part of his estate as well because he used to take care of me. So with that kind of situation, if you have people who have a problem, and let's remember this, if you happen to be the spouse, not the wife, you have to go to court to get declared to be the wife. So you see, even now, just giving you a basic introduction, I'm showing you layers of complication. a will is a good step. Of course, most Jamaicans, however, feel that when they do the will is that time they went dead. And so they don't want to do no will. Because it's like you're telling them, it's dead, you want me to go dead now. But we don't know the hour or the time. People die. We've seen this. What I think what this pandemic has taught us is just how frail we are, how uncertain life is. So it's something, it doesn't hurt to have it done. It must, however, in Jamaica be a particular way. It has to be in writing, and I can discuss those formalities as we go on.
Yes, because that was going to be my next question, Stuart, because boy, we just want to welcome everybody who's jumping on. Hey, Juliet, yes, him now look 44, right? Hey, Don from New York, 42, sorry. Oh, you're not 44, no, sorry.
No, I won't say anything.
42, sorry, 42. 40. I'm older than Stuart, guys. Let's just declare that. I'm older than Stuart. It's all good. That's another life. But yes, he's 42. Welcome, Juliet. Hey, Don. Welcome from New York. Ashley, see the question. So yes, I'm glad we're going to get into what's going to make it legally binding, Stuart, because even Diana is asking, in this age of pandemic and everything digital, can I do an audio will, pick up a phone and kind of record it? What do we have to do to make it legally binding, please, Stuart? Okay, just clarify.
All right. So so first thing, like I said, you must have two witnesses. These witnesses must not be people who sign this will. They say that they signed this will in your presence. So please don't do the will and you do it at home and you sign it, and you go to Mary and make Mary sign, and and next week you go and check Sue and Sue signed after her, because what they have to do is an affidavit that attests that they signed together in your presence. First. Two, the will must ensure that if you don't give any gifts to the people signing the will, those gifts are going to fail. Three, you must make provisions for, you can't tell, you may do a will today and you die in 15 years. So you have to ensure, ideally, to have what they call a residual clause, wherein that you say that the rest, residue, and remainder of your estate you leave in a particular way to whoever it is you want to do, for your executors to manage, or for a particular named individual. It's important because you can have a situation where you don't provide for something in your will, and then they have to know that falls under intestacy, and you have to go through another chain of issues, which takes more time and more money, and whatever you had left for anybody you had goes up into costs for the courts to manage your estate. So you have to plan. You have to plan, and you have to recognize, for example, I have young children. I have a will established now that says, if I should die and I die after carry on goes before me to the great yonder, I have decided and written who must take care of the children. It's very important, because I don't want to fight over that. Make plans in so that you know what happens to your assets, how they should be managed. If you're particularly thinking of young children or maybe people who are sick and dependent on you, something should be sold to take care of them over time. Very important. So those formalities are the critical ones to recognize. And of course, let's not be mistaken. Let's ensure that we do at least 2 copies of it. That's not a formality, but a good step. And let people know where it is. Do not hide it, because if you're dead and they cannot find it, we have a problem. Don't hide it.
Right.
So those, I think, are the critical things. People often say to me, what happens if, I don't have much, everything is in the name of, me and my sister.
Joint accounts. Yes, there was a question.
But sometimes you have a joint account with your sister because you trust her to manage everything. It's also good to put in that will that maybe the joint account is there, only her name is there as a formality. So I know in your institution, for example, JMMB creates a facility where that is understood by the documentation that you may create when you open an account. Other institutions have that as well. But if you don't, that person can very well go and take it all for themselves. You never know how things turn. The people who are sweetest when it's rosy become thorny thereafter, and the roses wither. So it's good to name, if you've created, because that in law is what you call a trust. So if I have made Carrie-Ann a trustee, and her name is on the account, but it's notional. She don't put no money in there. It's all my hard work money going there. So I name her as a trustee for the benefit of my 2 little rats. Then that's what her task is. And we set it up in the document to highlight that she, in fact, is a trustee. So trusts are an option. They can get more complicated than that. They can be simpler. And fun fact, if you happen to find love after you've done this will, make sure you do a new one after you get married. Why? Because when you have a will and you become married, a marriage revokes all wills. Start. Yep. So in Jamaica, it has to be in writing. Can't be an audio will. Sorry, Diana, not yet. You can do a video that tells you wishes, but it won't be. It won't have the same legal effect, because what must happen is when you die, that will is used. You name executors, and they go to court to get what they call a grant of probate to become executors of your estate and manage your affairs, sell assets, manage assets, etc.
Thank you so much, Stuart. And just to note, we see question coming in regarding common law. We're getting to that. There's a section specifically on spousal rights. So all of our friends in marriage and in common law relationships, stay tuned. Tag your friends, tell them to watch if you think this would benefit them as well. So stay tuned, don't move. So, okay, great, Stuart. So we defined what a will was, who needs to do it, what do we need to do to make it legally binding, why it's important. What's your view on life insurance in particular, as a kind of a side topic there?
I love it. I think it's a great way for you to be able to do more than you can with your current income. If you get what they call term insurance, you can be able to take out coverage that you can, what I call, grow with. So at 25, when your earnings can probably give you coverage for maybe $5 or $8 million, you could take out a term policy that's for $50 million. You're paying a premium that's equivalent to that, for example, but you're able to then hedge against the risk of, if I die young, what do I do if I have dependence, what I call up and down the stream? You may have the parents and you have the children. If you have up and down the stream, the little money you're growing in Jamaica with a dollar that devalues regularly is not enough to keep you going, and very few of us earn good hard currency. So life insurance has that first benefit, because you're able to get protection not just during your life in terms of an illness, but there are policies that mature on your death. And if you happen to die before before we hope you do pass, it's a great thing to have. And as you grow, income grows, so you can match a term policy and convert it if needs be. So it's a good way at an early age to be able to have a lot of protection. And the topic that maybe, I'll say it's a useful one too. It's a good way to keep your life in order if you are busy like Mr. Flynn. Because when you die, and provided you do the right thing and you name beneficiaries on those policies, what the insurance agent does is within weeks of your death, he discreetly goes or she goes and visits the four ladies, and they all get what they're supposed to get. No problem. Nobody has to know. Doesn't go under the estate. You don't have to wait on probate. It's a simple fix, and they're very happy, and they think of you even fonder. And they all cry out a nice little remembrance in the paper a year later. The cascade starts then, but nobody has to know, because he didn't have to wait on court and all these other issues. So it means that the money is not devoid, it's not spent out in administration of an estate. And as well, let's face facts. You could have a mother and a wife, and the wife and the mother seem to be all right, but they don't take the best at you. Is the nicest way to be able to make sure you're not leaving it to anybody else's discretion. It's what you want. And the beautiful thing about insurance is that you can change the beneficiary when you like. So if you and Mary are doing a nice thing now, you say, boy, Mary looking good for me, But something just vexes you about Mary, so you can't take it down. Just change it. Easy, no problem. You just call agents and come and checking off this one. But don't put estate as the beneficiary of your policies, because if you put your estate, then it has to go to probate. We don't want that, because that's when insurance companies keep the money for longer. Their job is to make money. You must be smart and don't do that. You can change the person as you wish, and it's a great tool to be used. I think we discussed it, for example, home ownership. Sometimes you can use that as security. So when you finish paying the mortgage and you had the nice policy, take back the policy and assign it. Give it to the faithful servant or the nice girlfriend or mommy or sister. That wife you don't have to worry about, and she don't have to know about it. So it's a good way for discretion, and a good way for certainty of your intentions to be carried out quickly and effectively, and more than you could earn in your life to provide.
Good stuff. Yes, we want to just acknowledge some folks jumping on. Just to pause here again. Hey, Orville, good evening. Thanks for joining. Janelle, Raquel, great to see you again. Thank you so much for joining, guys. Please keep the conversation going. We're having a great conversation. We have 3 segments tonight, so we're just about wrapping up this segment on what we call dead left, talking about wills and leaving the requisite affairs in order to prepare in advance for your demise, guys. It's don't worry, it's not say you do a will, you got dead tomorrow. I know we Jamaicans don't necessarily like to talk about that very often, but the reality is that once you have assets and you have loved ones you want to leave them for, whether it's children, spouses, parents, loved ones, any kind, you need to keep your stuff in order. So just generally, Stuart, to wrap this segment, because we're gonna go next into our spousal rights segment, because I see some questions coming in, and I want to acknowledge a comment that Diana put here in the chat. Diana said, remember, guys, if you're separated for 100 years and not divorced, when you're dead, you're still married. Now, technically, that's true, but Stuart has some very interesting nuggets, because some people held on to that and got caught with their pants down. So, guys, you don't want to move. And again, tag folks who need to hear this advice. So while we wrap up this segment, then, Stuart, could you kind of just share with us, again, as a key takeaway, how do we avoid a fight over dead left, then, as a key takeaway to the segment?
All right. So I think a good way to avoid the fight is to make sure that in your will you are specific and you make it clear all the things you want to say. So let me explain. I mentioned 2 bits of legislation in Jamaica: the Inheritance Provision for Family and Dependents Act and the Interstate Estates Property Charges Act. That's the one that covers what you call letters of administration when you die without a will. Now, the one I mentioned first is an interesting one. Design is one of those what I call the social advancement in the 70s under the PNP. The time Mr. Manley put a lot of these legislation they passed in that period, which was to address certain what they felt were inequities in our system. So now, let me give you a scenario. I am now on my 2nd marriage, and I had some maintenance for my first wife, and I had to provide for her. She remains unmarried. I die. She didn't remarry. I've moved on, have somebody else, and I've left. Now I figured, well, she get enough alimony from me all these years. That's enough for her. No, I've left everything to my dear wife, Peaches.
You've left everything to the 2nd wife.
My 2nd wife, Peaches.
Okay, Peaches. Mm-hmm.
Yes, but Beatrice, you know what Beatrice sound like? Beatrice that she now decide that, you know what, I'm dead now, but what happened to the thing used to get a regular? I can't pay the rent the same way. I can't maintain the hairstyle. Beatrice, within 6 months of getting the probate, Beatrice can go to court and say, you know what, Stuart made no provisions for me, and I was dependent. It goes as far as recognizing a former wife, former husband, parents, children. So if you have worthless Pickney or Pickney who faced it with you, and they can show where you had provided for them, but maybe in the last days when you're sick, they don't come to wipe your bottom and they do business with you. You say, you know what, to hell with them. You are able. You make a will that says specifically your intentions and why you're doing it. Because if you're silent, then there's going to be a big problem. So recognize that your will can be varied. So if you want to avoid that variation, let us be honest in our dealings. Don't allow for too many surprises, because dead left can come where if you kept that love child a secret and no one knew about it, or the matey a secret, matey can come out and make noise. There's an example, since I know you all love my stories. There's a case a few years ago as a part of where picture it, there was a gentleman who made money through particular means that did not appeal to his parents who were staunch churchgoers. But as the Lord have it, by the time of he died, suddenly leaving a wife and some concubines. Solomon had very little over him. And what happened was, yes, it's truth, no fiction. There is a cases are brought by 2 baby mothers and his parents for a variation of his will, because when he died, he only left things to his wife and those children. Everybody else now was able to file in court, and he left some money and means. there was a battle now because the parents who didn't want anything before now came back to say, well, I am sick, I have this particular need. How daddy and mommy have particular medical issues and they need some payouts. So there had to be litigation over that. Now, had he taken a particular view to say, and there's a reason why he made no provision for them, because in his life they took a particular posture. But they could show that they were reliant in some respects. And so they were able to contest that will. So those situations, you have to realize, can create a problem in terms of the certainty. And that's where you have fights, because now it's a battle over what is reasonable for you to live with and sharing the pot when you figured everything was for me. So let us ensure that we are clear in our dealings, and in those wills express, Mary was a selfish child in her life. I've given her enough. All that I intend to give her, I've given her already. And for that reason, the gifts for these children remain so and so. Be as specific. Don't just tell us what kind of colors you want at the funeral. Give the instructions in a clear way. And that's why maybe sometimes it's important not to use the Times Store wills form or the one you find online. Because if you have particular differences or things that need to be clear, only you know your secrets,
Yes.
Open them up.
That's a question. That's a final question before we move to the spousal rights section, because I see some great questions coming up, like even Ingrid asking about couples with no children. We're going to deal with that when we move across the spousal rights. But so how do we do this will thing, Stuart? Because Roku, I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm pronouncing these handles correctly. RQ, so sorry. What's the cost associated with doing a will? I mean, it's a rich people thing. I mean, how does an average Joe like me kind of just get a will done without
even those less average than you? I mean, the good thing is you live in a world where lawyers are a skill set. There are many of us out there. A will is something that I think people charge in maybe $10,000-$15,000 to create for you at the base. Jamaican dollars, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, for those of us who have assets in cross jurisdictions and need trusts established, it won't be that simple. But it's something that you can spend that kind of money on and be able to have greater peace of mind. And remember, as I said to people all the time, you know what a man's primary need is? A woman's need is security. So for the men out there, if you want to keep the lady secure, you have to make plans that ensure she's not surprised. Because she will walk over the grave and you know what she's going to do when she stand up over it. You don't want that on your gravestone. It smells. So it's true, people get vexed. You don't want that kind of crosses. So you know why you brought me here. These are the challenges you're going to face. Press along.
Sir. My apologies for anything inappropriate my husband may say during this live, and also apologies to anybody named Beatrice. I'm kidding. But yes. Yes, guys. So great information. Thanks, Janice. Yes, RQ, I'm so sorry for butchering your name. I'm sorry. Thanks for your participation. Hey, Kadia, him give trouble, man. Trust me, him give trouble. So, all right, guys. So that's your will. Again, if you missed anything, we're recording this so you can go back and watch it again. We're going now into the spousal rights section.
Juliet,
yes, sir.
Remember, Juliet has qualified something I may have overlooked. When I said in your life insurance, make sure that you tick the beneficiaries are revocable. All Nothing must be permanent in that situation. This is what you call flexible for you to use as life changes and your needs may change. You start with at 18, everything is for mommy. But later you decide it's going to be for, I have a wife now, I have 2 children, 3 different women. You may have variations on the theme. So make sure it's revocable and not to your estate. Thank you very much, Juliet, for that caution. But great tool.
Yes, thank you, Juliet. See, we're loving the participation. Everybody got some nuggets to share. Yes, guys, thanks. Kadia, I'm not so as bad as Stuart, man. Lord, no say so. All right, so we're moving into the spousal section. Spousal rights. So we know Jamaica is famous for a lot of variations what the definition of a spouse is. My goodness. We know how that's there already. And when we use the word spouse in Jamaica, depending on who you're speaking to, it means many different things. So First of all, because again, guys, if this is going to be another awesome segment, because a lot of people don't know their rights, particularly women, I may say, but a lot of men too, because sometimes when we think of spousal rights, we think of women being the weaker sex and needing to, don't worry, men have rights too. I mean, it's a two-way partnership. What is spousal rights in the context of the law in Jamaica, Stuart? Just break that down for us, because I know a lot of people need to be cued in, and I know this is going to be great.
All right, so spousal rights, guys. Spousal rights is a term that we may or may not be familiar with, but in Jamaica, the concept of a common law union has been embraced in a way that puts you on par. So, I mean, you're kind of in similar ranking to a wife. You get the same benefits. If you are a single man with a single woman cohabiting, so you live together and you're expected to have doing all the things that people who live together and would be married would do. But you two must be single. So that is not married to anybody else at the time you start. And for 5 years, you live in this way. So for 5 years, Stephen and Charmaine, both Charmaine divorced, let's give it as mixed up. And divorce means divorce, fully divorced. I'll explain that a little later too. And Stephen never been married, kissed by Charmaine for the first time. I've seen him fine. And they're together 5 years. At the end of, if in year 6, Charmaine should pass, and Charmaine was the one who had the things. Stephen is her spouse. So he's entitled, if we pick up our examples, Stephen would be entitled to be getting that half interest in her property that she left, and he'd have all of her full share of what they call her personalty and chattels. That's a rough estimate. The Act can break down those things for you, and a good lawyer can tell you all about the breakdown, but that's the example. What the law has done is, through various pieces of legislation, the two I mentioned earlier, they've now included spouse to be party who can claim and get those benefits. So previously, living with the man for 20 years, never married to him, would not apply. Now you have a 5-year common law standard that gives you the rights and benefits that a wife or husband would have, even though you didn't go to a church or the RGD and get a marriage license. Now, to be established, you must show that you have lived together as man and wife. That's called cohabiting is important.
So you have to live together. You hear that, Alison?
Yeah, the cohabiting is important. You go to your house, I go to my house, you kind of break the chain. And it does have, but if you think about it, I suspect you may ask me shortly, is there a difference? Well, I said it's on par, but not the same. I don't know if I'm preempting you, Carrie Ann, but that's where, if I were talking, I said to you, sometimes we say to people, you live in a world where you have not bought the cow, but you're drinking the milk merrily for 5 years. And you figure, yes, you're good. I tell people all the time, be careful about that. But it's not as easy as we think, because there are two things about it. One, I've mentioned Stephen and I've mentioned Charmaine, that situation. I didn't add in my story that Charmaine had 2 children who did not like Stephen, because Stephen was 22 and Charmaine was 52. It works, eh? So Stephen is a little older than some of Charmaine's children. Don't take to Stephen, think him just never like him. The problem is, Charmaine dies without a will. What is the reality? That before Stephen can claim his rights, having been with Charmaine for those 6 years, he has to go to court to be declared a spouse. So though you're recognized, you have to prove yourself. So, show thyself approved unto God, you have to go before the court and dig up the things to prove why you are that. And then the family that don't like you can fight out and say, lie or tell, because Stephen have 5 gal road. And my mother, dirty boy, you dirty man, right? Yes, leave him troublesome. And they're going to fight over Stephen. And Stephen has to bring up all kind of things. I had a case a few years ago, that nice old lady, she and this gentleman, 20 odd years, near 30 years together. They were neighbors in the community, and he left his house and came into her house, no puns intended, and made a home in there, but the children didn't like him. Big case, thank God the lady kept cards from the family at various times, proof of her taking him got doctor, next of kin and the UE, what them call it, the UC form, you know, to show who take care of him. But it was a big fight. Had to go to the Facebook and get evidence and show who did what and how long even they knew her to be in that state. But because of that deadlift battle, and because you have to prove yourself, it's a hurdle that when you're in grief, you don't want to have. And it's a hurdle that requires for you to be safe and secure in your station as spouse, to get the rights of wife or husband, you have to be embraced by family. I had a case of a young man who died terribly, very tragically. And his mother, of course, would have been the administrator, named by no will, not married. But happily for this young lady who had a child for the man, the mother and her were fine. So when we went to court, she supported the application. But can you imagine now you're in your 30s, you lose your significant other with a picnic, baby on the breast, for example, and you have to go fight in court over them things. So when the man tells you, say, you're safe, baby, you're safe, you're not safe, it's more stress on your body, more hacklement, more harassment that you didn't bargain for, and you don't have the security, because the same people who make kin teeth with you when he's alive, when he's dead now, they have no excuse. Their true colors come shining through, like the song says. So that's a big difference. Another big difference, it doesn't work as securely as the former wife I mentioned a while ago, the divorced person. Because, you know, whereas for divorce, there's a process, and we'll discuss that later. For a common law situation, if you have a break, so if there's a year where you've been separated, it's all over. 30 years together, give the man everything. And after a year, you know, mash up, sake of some problem, that year wipes out everything else. You have no claim.
The 30 years gone down the toilet.
Flushed like you know what. Yep.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
And this won't throw the toilet. It won't fly back up. It's going all the way down. So it's a thing that it is easy to wither away. And people forget. There are many people in this world in Jamaica who say that they're single, but they're married same way. And as Diana said earlier, there are many a case of the man who is married, but the wife left to England years ago, take up and all have new accent. They should never see her yet. There's the picture in the house wither up, and the picture them forget about her. You are mummy. But guess what? You happen to have been, if he's still married to her, and even if he divorces her in the time of your union, your time only starts to run after he has been divorced. So, you know, it's a lot of math and magic and management that, again, threatens security and creates uncertainty.
Wow, this is good stuff. I think we're touching on some awesome questions that came in. Yes, Carisha, you said that the burden of the proof. As you said, Stuart, digging up all of the greeting cards and the Facebook pictures and all these things to prove that you are actually living together as man and wife, because you could encounter relatives who said, no, that's not the case. And the burden is on you to find the gardener and the helper.
Neighbor support you. So, you know, the people who love in quiet, baby, I'll meet you on the inside of the cinema. You know, I like to keep my life private. Nobody don't know about your relationship. Problem. Sometimes you have to go out and use the social media like Karen and tell the world about where you've been traveling to. Because if you don't do that, people don't know. And that's going to be a challenge. So remember that these are the things you have to think about. It sounds a little morbid, but it's the kind of conversation we're having, because the truth is, hindsight is the only thing that provides clear vision. So you need to ensure that you realize that being a spouse is not all it's cracked up to be. It's not as secure as you would think. There's a hurdle to overcome.
Wow. There's a question we had here when we were setting up the discussion flow for this live, Stuart, and it spoke about, are there equal rights and responsibilities in a marriage?
You mean like Shauna or like Peter Tosh? Equal rights and justice? There are equal rights in a marriage to this extent. Again, with reform in some of our legislation, there was a time where it was felt that the man, as the breadwinner, the burden was on a man to maintain. Now there are equal rights because it looks at the fact of equality. So from the assets and what you call, there's a law called the Property Rights of Spouses Act. And that now presumes that you start off with a 50-50 proposition in what they call family property. And in the years gone by, the housewife would have had to show that her contribution made up to 50. What happens now is the law starts you off at 50. And if somebody can prove otherwise, that interest can be reduced. But what has also happened is our Maintenance Act changed in about 2004. So in the early 2000s, we had another radical shift with legislation that looked at the new world, where it's woman time now. So equal rights and justice under the law means that a man can be maintained by a woman.
Come again?
Yes, a man can get mine too. The man can go to court and say, I have been used for my service and my God-given gifts, and I want money for it because I don't like to go to work other than to work. So he wants to get what he was accustomed to, and he can sue for maintenance. So the men, in foreign here about house husband, there are other types of men you have in Jamaica. And it is something that is not uncommon. We no longer have the shame and, to say, boy, we're going to court. There are men who sue for maintenance and who want interest in property that they had nothing to do to buy or to because they now have that benefit. Because it no longer defines wife or husband, it's spouse. So the law recognizes you in equal ways because we're gone in the days where women were, smaller feet nearer to the sink. You are kept barefoot and pregnant. Women are working and earning a lot more than men oftentimes. It's not uncommon in our reality. So the law recognizes that and creates the same benefits for men and the same burdens for women that men would have previously had. So don't take for granted that because you're a woman, you don't have to mind him. So I've said to women all the time, mind how you mind him. It's a line. I may have to copyright it, but mind how you mind him is a serious thing. You take up man and you like certain things he does, and you have this notion of convenience, and I'm independent. If you're going to be independent, you have to recognize that when it's time to sever, if he may want to maintain the lifestyle to which he's grown accustomed. Not unusual, ladies. So let the buyer beware on both sides of the front. No pun intended.
No pun intended. Mind how you mind him, ladies. I think that's an awesome nugget. Mind how you mind him, because the reality is it cuts both ways. Wow. Just a quick question. Someone said here, if you break up in common law and you get back for 5 years, would that count? Native foreign on YouTube.
Yeah. It's all 5 years. 5 years is your threshold. Once you get to 5 continuously, you reach. If it's 4, if it broke, you broke. It's done.
Right. And Alson was asking, what if you have a child? Would the child be getting anything over that family? I guess thinking, where does a child stand in the ranking?
That child, so now what becomes unfortunate for some of us is that child, depending on the circumstance, if the man has claimed the child, then that is his child, no issue. But if, I don't know, we saw this frightening statistic about 1 in every 3 children is a jacket in Jamaica. 1 in 3 or 1 in 6, but something that is still alarming to me, either one. The challenge you have is that in those circumstances, the reality you have is that child is entitled because that child does have benefits under the law. So if a man has children, for example, and leaves property, half to wife, half to children. But you have to then, if that child has not been declared, you have to then prove the paternity of that child. That the child was a child acknowledged by the man. All those other nuances that you don't need to have. Look here how the child have the same half a yam foot or buck teeth, and ears cock off like mine. He said the same way Johnny ears cock off, him pick me. It doesn't really matter. If they say no, it's not true, she did have one of them with a big ears man she love, then you're going to have to prove all these things. And that's what you're going to have to recognize. But children have always been protected and they continue to be protected. But again, it's the hurdle to prove they're right.
Yeah.
Whereas in the classic setup of man, woman, marriage, birth certificate, have child, father name on it, these things are clear, you have less of a problem. But if a child has been what you call a child of the family or acknowledged by the man, then that's going to be easier for you to overcome. But the child is not left out.
Okay.
And what the law provides, if you don't have a will, something I haven't mentioned, Carrie-Ann, is that there is the Administrator General, the AG in Jamaica, takes over the estate of anybody who has a minor child. That's a child under the age of 18 who dies When you die and you have minor children, if you don't have a will, they don't leave it up to your mother or your auntie, they leave it to the Administrator General to manage the affairs of that family, to ensure that the children's assets, the children are protected first.
Okay, that's good to know.
But anyhow, you had a child outside of this. So the same example I gave you of the young person who died tragically. He had this lady known to him, but guess what? Post the funeral came another lady with a child. So when we had to look at settling up that estate, there were provisions for that child as well to be acknowledged. This lady was a mature woman who accepted that the man, he loved women. He just loved people. So he was a giving person. And she had to forgive him on that transgression, but she embraced the fact that this other child existed and that child was also protected. So yes, but had it not been the case, you'd have had to get a paternity test to prove that, Moripovich, yes, he was the father. And you go through that battle first.
Just a quick question here from Yannick before we go into our final question in this segment. Yannick was saying, if you lived with a man for 35 years, you're completely dependent on him for everything. He dies, leaves a will, but the executor of the man's will is a child from another relationship. Is it legal for the executor to also be a beneficiary of the will?
Completely legal. Yeah, man.
Okay.
You can leave the executor as a beneficiary, but what would have to happen in that case is you'd have to go to court within your 6-month window and claim as a dependent, whether for the child or if yourself, if you can be established in that way. Well, for 35 years you are a spouse, then you would have to get a declaration of you being a spouse to prove your entitlement, and you would have to then look at a variation of the will if that were the case. To make the provisions. So yes, it's possible, but painful, because at the end of that, there's so much vitriol and tension that exists. It's like reopening a wound that is full of pus. I'm being graphic for it. It's awful, an awful experience.
Yeah, it is. I find though, Stuart, before we go into because we had a question on side chicks, okay? We're just dealing with the popular questions here, folks. This does not have anything to do with what JMMB subscribes to as an organization. But as we talk about a greater security that exists in the context of marriage versus a common law relationship, and obviously once you're married, it's easier to prove, and you do have this 5-year cutoff time and all these things that you have to be proving to other people. I can't be totally comfortable in my marriage though. So let's say the marriage dissolves, and I know we're going into marriage and divorce and separation in our next segment of this discussion coming up shortly. Can I be totally comfortable that I am the wife? Yeah, man, me have the piece of paper, and even though I'm living with another Miss Thing right now, 5 years and change, I'm still his wife on paper, so I'm good. Can I be comfortable in that?
Well, in terms of what? You mean in your station, in your position as wife?
Like when he dies, the will hasn't been updated. I'm still the beneficiary, or even if, let's say, he updated the will to accommodate for the girlfriend, and I'm still the wife. Does the 50% rule still apply? I mean, what happens in those circumstances? I guess I just want to know what are the red flags that wives need to be aware of, not to get comfortable.
All right. Well, what I'd say is be wary of side chicks who have babies for your husband. Those side chicks have power, because under the law, the persons who can challenge a distribution in a will would be the wife or husband of the deceased, a child, a parent of the deceased who was maintained wholly or partly, or was legally entitled to be maintained, a former wife or a former husband of the deceased who has not remarried. Right? Now, that category doesn't include the side chick, but side chicks, if they have minor children, you might as well just have them in the space anyway, because they're going to show all the reasons why they should be covered. And if the man should leave something for the side chick, you can't stop him. You know?
Yeah, once it's in the will.
Once it's in the will. So a side chick if she has children, it's going to be a problem. But a side chick can't say that, oh, because he put me up in the apartment and he bought me the Prado, then I am entitled to more Prados over the rest of my life. I can, find another man to satisfy my other needs. No, that won't necessarily work. But if she got some babies for him, yeah, man, she's able to secure those babies and herself in the mix because, hey, the babies have someone to take care of them. So she ends up managing the stuff for the babies. And they go to whatever the baby must go to her,
Wow.
So yeah, that's where it becomes a little troublesome and she come to your yard and make a little noise. Yeah. It can happen. It can happen. So if he's free with his judgment and spread it evenly, you have one, she have one, Mary have one, it's going to be a problem.
Wow. Okay then. Thank you very much. So I think we addressed the side chick question. No, we're not just the side chicks to have rights just to get the Prado. But if she has a child, she certainly can contest for anything that's available to take care of that child. And of course, she would perhaps be an extended beneficiary of that because she's the one taking care of the minor child now that parent is deceased.
As the master,
yes, what is it saying there? Marcia is
Brooks.
To the spouse to whom I'm married at the time of my death clause recognized in Jamaica?
Yeah, because it's only one you can have. So any clause in a will that creates doubt is going to be voidable. But it's only one wife or husband you can have, well, certainly unless you are, yes, typically, because we don't recognize polygamy or bigamy rather. So you can only have one wife at a time. So the one wife will be the one. So the men who call wifey and babes, if you're married to babes and wifey was just the old one, you call wifey or mums, then it doesn't matter. There's a confusion. But it's only one wife, yes, that clause would still apply. Similar to the children living at the time of my death.
Yes. All right. Good stuff. So awesome segue then into our final segment on marriage, or should I say we're going to touch on a little pre-marriage and divorce. So guys, we love the engagement. Again, please continue to drop the nuggets, drop the questions. We really love it. Thanks you guys for joining us. And so now another great segment because we're just coming out of spousal rights. Spoke a lot to a lot of information for our friends in common law relationships and how does that match up against marriages. But we're going now into marriage and divorce. So before we get married, Stuart, prenup. So a lot of us probably would have even heard about prenup by watching a lot of TV, a lot of sitcoms, a lot of series, shows, programs. You hear about this thing called a prenup. I don't know if it's as popularly discussed in Jamaica, and some people have their own ethical and other reasons as to why I must have a prenup. Because if you make me sign a prenup, it means that you don't trust me and you don't love me, right? All these conversations that tend to happen. In the context of how we operate in Jamaica, Stuart, and certainly the law here, what is a prenup and how does it work in Jamaica?
All right, so a prenup is a lot like what you have heard about on TV, but what people don't realize it is an agreement entered into between a man and a woman, as we see it in Jamaica, for the assets acquired before the marriage, prenuptial agreement. And it should speak to what you agree to happen if in the event of a separation. But what is recognized greater in Jamaica is the dealing with assets acquired before the marriage. You cannot, because in Jamaica, you cannot, you can't enter an agreement that is contrary to the law. So we have in law the Property Rights of Spouses Act, the Maintenance Act. Property Rights of Spouses Act sets up a framework for the distribution of assets that are deemed to be family property. And to that extent, the prenup can be considered in this way. Let me give you an example. It's a typical scenario you tend to see still. So the older man finds a younger, firmer, fitter lady to keep him comfortable at night and the day. And she is beautiful, vivacious, but you don't have anything. And he has children before, and to ensure that nobody thinks she's only there for his money and not his other assets and attributes. He needs to satisfy himself that, this is real love. So he says, all right, I have some stuff before. So these things, though, are not for you. These are for my children. I acquired these things before. So these things I'm leaving to these individuals. And it is clear that those things all bets are off. But if during the marriage you acquire other things, then those things are fair game, because all is fair in love and war. So the prenup really is a separation of assets before marriage, and then what happens after. What happens after, you can see it here, it's out of the picture. That is not a part of the prenup. It's whatever is between my finger and the screen. That area is what you can determine. For it to work in Jamaica now, the important thing is that people sign these documents. They have to get independent legal advice, because you don't want to do a document that somebody says, he forced me to sign it. I didn't really want to sign it. Particularly if you're looking at benefits that you're saying, I waive my right to certain benefits. So it must be balanced. It must be a document that is not unfair, that says, in the event that you leave me for another man, you get nothing. No. Because in Jamaica, what you say is that if you still had interest in a property that you acquired during your marriage, you should have those rights and benefits to it. So it has to be something that is fair in its distribution, that doesn't seem to be too draconian or extreme. It has to be balanced, and it has to be done in a way where the person who is in the lesser economic position gets independent advice, which is verified. A lawyer would have to verify that I've advised this person of what the terms here entail, and she accepts those positions freely, or he accepts them freely. So for it to be enforceable, it must, on its very terms, be balanced. It can't be seen to be oppressive, or a court can strike it and say, well, this was just a desperate move or a thing used to take advantage of somebody, and it shouldn't trump, forgive the pun, particularly tonight, it shouldn't trump what are her inalienable rights as wife. Have I answered the question? I hope.
Okay. Yes, thank you. So, obviously every situation is different. What would you say to a couple who is considering a prenup, both on the male and the female side, whoever is in the weaker economic position, it doesn't matter, but is it something you think people should be considering in a day and age like this? Obviously every situation is different, but
I think that it's good to quiet rumors, because if you're married for love and not for things, then you shouldn't have a challenge with it. And if it's going to be a fairly done document, then why not? So, if you're on your second win and you say, I'm going again, doing it for the likes. I love this girl, excited, but guess what? This person, the provisions for her have to be distinct from the provisions for everybody else who has come before. And so it really, again, like estate planning, it's a management of certain things and saying, okay, this is for you, but this before is for my children. So at the end of the day, this is what, and it's again, I see April JPS 29 or our JPS 29 making a point here. It's the critical thing to make it enforceable is there must be no evidence of what we call in law undue influence. So if you force somebody to do this and they're doing it to prove something, but they don't really want to do it, and it's established, it was under duress, there's a problem. So again, in this example, I think you can determine if you want to raise that question now. But anything that is any document, this our JPS here says, if a will is done when somebody is sick and doesn't know what they're doing, only if you can prove that the person who did the will was not able to really make his intentions clear. So if you went behind the wife's back, it don't matter, because maybe that's the only time the man can tell you what he thinks. Doesn't want his wife to know what he said. But if you can show the man was sick and he didn't know January from October and didn't know it was 1942 or 19 or 2020, he is not of clear enough mind to have made those decisions, because it must be done voluntarily. And that's what undue influence speaks about. If it's a voluntary act to which you know the ramifications of, then it's enforceable. If not, it's open to challenge and scrutiny. And if you're a lady who made a decision just to please the old man, I'm dead now, and when things mash up, you said, no, I was afraid, I didn't know what I was signing. That's why you need independent legal advice for that certificate from the lawyer that says, I sat with her and I explained these terms and she accepted them.
Yeah, always good to do it with a lawyer. Thank you so much, Stuart. Before I wanted to insert another question, but just to acknowledge a question before our JPS from Shane. Shane, we were recording this conversation. Great to know. Thank you for joining us. So you definitely can catch the replay because you're going to get the answer to your question in the segment we spoke about with spousal rights, and we spoke about a common law relationship living together for a minimum of 5 years unbroken, and what it would take to prove that you were in fact a common law spouse of the person that you're living with, because we did share examples where unfortunately if that spouse would have died, the burden of proof that the surviving common law spouse would have to go through if the family did not know of them or chose not to acknowledge them. We did an awesome segment on that, so I would encourage you to watch the replay. But question, Stuart, about
Shane in trouble though. Shane have trouble.
yes, Shane look like, yeah, it's a serious
Shane in trouble.
situation.
Trouble.
Trouble, yes. So please watch the replay, Shane, because it sounds sticky. Yes, Satchmo, you never know Stuart was here. You must follow us on social media. You know, yeah, man, we had the flyers circulating from last week. Happy to have you. Thanks for joining. Okay, great. So Stuart, so we just covered prenup now. And the question I have, because we have a question here about losing interest in your property, but in the whole matter of divorce, right? If you could kind of give us a quick summary, particularly for those members of the marital union who are the weaker economic party. I think that was the nomenclature you had used just now, which usually tends to be the woman in a marriage, but sometimes it's the men. But some women, some of the members who are the weaker economic party to the union, the marriage, going through a divorce, don't always know what their rights are. And I know even just accompanying you to similar presentations like what we're having tonight, you know, there are women who get wives, legitimate wives, I'm talking, even common law 5 years, or you have the piece of paper. The husband said, well, I'm not interested anymore. You need to move out because I'm me pay for the mortgage and you not put no money into this place. And the women, of course, unfortunately, take up them things and leave because they think that that is true, you know. Could you tell us, you know, really what do I need to bear in mind as my rights under the law when I have a spouse who looks at me and says, you know, I'm not interested anymore. They are the stronger economic party. Yeah. Break it down for us, Tyler.
Okay. So that's foolishness for a few reasons. If your name is on the title of that property or not, if it's the place where you both live together as have family, husband and wife, provided it is his name on the title alone and not him and his mother, for example. So you can say, boy, it wasn't really family property. It was something I inherited separately from you. You know, I've come to live there all the time. Or his name's not there at all, but his family's name is there. And so he's saying, you don't have any, we no longer wish you to be here. In the scenarios I gave first, for example, his name alone or your name with his, even if you didn't contribute financially to that property, if it's the family home, you have an equal share in that property. And what in 2004 our lawmakers did was to make that pellucid. Big word, I know, but the point is they made it crystal clear. They set up in the law a position that says, and that's why I mentioned for you the idea of the rebuttable presumption, that now you start off at half interest. That is your right, whether your name is there or not. You, however, have to do this within a particular period of time. Within 1 year of your separation, you need to be able to establish your claim. And that claim can be established without the arduous task you had in years gone by. You can simply make it very clear. This was a family home. He owned this asset and we were there together. We have children. We live there for this amount of years. And the courts will determine from whether it's 50 or less than 50, but you start at 50. Similarly, there are some women who I find, men not so much, but there are women who don't, maybe the man was violent or you just are so fed up, you're so sick of the nastiness of this disgusting and you're gone. Form a new life. I always caution them, be careful what you're doing. Because if you think you're safe because your name's on the title, and you think you're safe because, you know, the mortgage is being paid by standing order out of my account and she's still taking my money, so I must be fine. There's a problem. You finish paying the mortgage now, title free and clear. Still in the safe at the bank, and you have the key or you have the access to the vault. But you went away to Cayman to work, Bahamas to teach, wherever you went, England, US, and you just make your skin crawl, your back itch, you can't manage him. You're gone. Here's a problem. You can lose your rights in that property because you can be deemed to have abandoned it. And the same way a squatter can take over a place for 12 years, your husband or your wife can dispossess you of your interest after 12 years if you have abandoned your rights to the property. And that is a position established in about 2003. So the last 17 years in the Privy Council was a case called Wills and Wills involving a Jamaican scenario just like that. Mr. Wills was married to, let's call it Carrie Ann Wills, and he and she divorced. They had a home together, and Carrie Ann Wills went away. Not only her name, not Carrie Ann, for example. And then Mr. Wills married Jane, and Jane is with him, and many years passed now, 30 years. And here's the problem. Oh, him dead now is when Carrie Ann come back and say, excuse me. We were joint tenants, you know, dead left, who did last win. So I've come for my home. So she's the last wife said, what do you mean you come for it? It's my house. You're gone. She says, no, it's my house. I'm on the title. We went as far as the Privy Council, and what the Privy Council happily said for the wife, what did I call her? Mary? It's Carrie Ann get joke.
Carrie Ann Wills.
Carrie Ann for the last 20 odd years had been away and had been deemed to have abandoned her interest in the property. Because Carrie Ann left Stuart Wills to do all that he could do in the place with new wife, everything. Showed no rights. She had suggested in the courts in Jamaica, I think the Court of Appeal, had given her a benefit to say that because she left some furniture in the house, some clothes and things, that it was okay, that her intention was never to leave. But on a balance of everything together, the courts, the Privy Council accepted that her actions showed no interest and there was abandonment. And by virtue of that abandonment, the wife, the second wife, though her name was not on the title, was entitled. Because, and what you want to remember is, remember I mentioned some dates for you. This case was in 2003 in the Privy Council. Our new Property Rights of Spouses Act only was passed in 2004. So before you had the establishment for poor second wife, Mary Wills here, Mary Wills would have had a very difficult time under law. She couldn't go and claim her right through the husband because the idea of family property was not a part of our law at the time. So what she had to go under through a very tenacious advocate, Ingrid Lee Clark is the lawyer's name, she was able to advance a cause that people didn't think could work. And it set groundbreaking provisions that now, 17 years later, many people have benefited from. And similarly, many people can be dispossessed because of this position. So when you leave, make sure that you don't leave in this notion that, you know, come back and visit, take up the space. And as I say to people all the time, sell the asset, buy one out, but do something. Don't leave it to his good nature. Because if you make more than 12 years past, the clock can tick and you'll see what happens. So you decide that I just want to see the back of him, but not the back of your things. Because you will lose your things too. Separate your feelings and you work hard, whether you worked, however you had to work for this, or whatever you put up with, it's yours. You have an interest in it, particularly if you share the title to it. Don't be too quick, because most of us have somebody who would want to benefit from it. So don't give it up unless you have a real reason and know what you're doing.
Right. And I think that's a great point, Stuart, especially because, again, a lot of women don't understand, you know, even for those, I mean, Carrie Ann Wills was a different example because it sounds like she had put interest in the property perhaps, but there are just some wives or husbands whose names are not on the title unknowingly, or they weren't contributors to the mortgage because that was just the way the marriage was, or they didn't have the financial means to do so. And so they feel they need to pack up and go. And your word is no. If if they were married, they're entitled to their rightful share of those assets.
When these things are happening, go and get advice from an expert. So there are
Yes.
lawyers who should know, who practice in this area. Go and you find about them. If anybody's saying that they don't know what they're talking about, they don't mention some of these key points I've been telling you, then go to a different one. Like I said, there are many of us out there. But get advice, because the worst thing to do is to act out of ignorance or fear. Sometimes I don't know which one is worse. Or the worst one is arrogance. You think you know, because he who knows that he knows that is a damn fool. So try to get information, empower yourself with that knowledge. So forums like these are important, but get the facts. And don't allow a bully to, limit your interest.
Absolutely. Shanique has a question. Hi again, Shanique. Another question. My parents have been divorced for years. My father remarried, and the house is in both my parents' names. My mom lives in it presently. So father seems to have married, gone elsewhere with a set new wife. So mom, the first wife, lives in the home.
She lives in the house that the husband herself would have had, but she paid it off.
She paid off the mortgage, right? Can she get the house for herself if she wants to remove her father's name?
Well, if her father consents, there can be a transfer. And what the law allows is if it was the family property, then there can be an agreement where actually the law allows a waiver of taxes and duties in that way, if it's the transfer of family property. But there has to be an agreement within a particular time frame. But of course, good lawyers have their cases that have been established since the law was passed to allow for enlargement of time. So the short answer is yes. The machinations will be based on the full facts, but it is entirely possible. What some people like to do is in those circumstances, the party who is leaving the benefit will say, well, I won't give it to you alone, but put the children's names on it. And that's something that you have to be careful of. So, because there's sometimes you add children to properties, might as well just give it to it. Because, when you give it to the children and yourself, you don't have any control anymore when they join, they own it with you.
Yeah.
So that's another point we could think about in terms of securing your assets and knowing your rights. Sometimes what you think is a good thing for the future, I say, there's a line I've heard from a family member of mine. It says, of his mother's two children, he loves himself most or more. You have to put yourself first sometimes. You have to be willing to think about your interests and realize that when you do things like tie yourself to other people to make the decisions, you no longer have a say. And there are people I've had clients of who've been constrained by the fact that they've done transfers to children and they're now hindered. They can't do what they want because the children don't agree. If there's no refusal, if there's a refusal to transfer, then you go to court for declarations of interest. And you can go to court for declaration for what they call, if it's a case where it's a joint tenancy, you can apply for what they call a severance of that joint tenancy. Very important, because if your mother should die tomorrow, your father takes over the place. So what's important is to apply to court for what they call a severance of a joint tenancy and a declaration of what the interests that are. And that application would highlight the points raised that would demonstrate why the father's interest is far less than the mother's. Let's just make it simple. Mm-hmm. So a refusal would have to mean a court situation, but it doesn't mean that he walks away with nothing unless you can establish an abandonment. So if he's not good-natured but thinking of himself first, she may have to think about buying him out. But how much she buys him out is based on a declaration of what his true interest is. So you would be saying in that case, based on those facts, it's not 50-50. She took the burden all on herself. She managed it her own. So his interest is limited to what he may have contributed at the outset. And the courts, there are cases where the court will say in those circumstances, his right is 20%, 30%, for example, depending on how long ago it was.
Right. Thanks, Shani. Great question. Stuart, is there a difference between being separated and divorced? And all of us kind of feel, we're still married on paper. I can't bother go through all of that for whatever. But, we're good.
Let me give you an example. A very big difference. There are two steps to being separated. In Jamaica, divorce is established since 1987, I believe, or 89. Our Matrimonial Causes Act determines how you get divorced. How you get divorced in Jamaica is evidence of what they call irretrievable breakdown of your marriage, which is usually confirmed by 1 year's separation, after which you're able to apply to the court for divorce. You make a petition, you file a document called a petition for divorce, and you highlight the fact that you don't have to go into details about whether he was you've been beat you or him have enough woman. It can be very, we had disagreements. You don't have to go into cause, fault. So it's a no fault jurisdiction in Jamaica now, unlike what it was in years gone by. No longer do you have to hire the detective to show where have him sleep at the woman's house and you'll find her panty in your glove compartment. Those things don't apply anymore, and photographs of his indiscretions or shortcomings. You simply have to show 1 year separation, irretrievable breakdown of marriage, and you apply for the divorce. The first step you get is, once this court is satisfied in the particulars and the formats that are set up in the rules, service of the petition, that it is not being defended or challenged, there is what you call the grant of a decree nisi. Decree, N-I-S-I, Latin term, which is really in Latin a decree of separation. Many people confuse the decree nisi with the divorce because it's named decree and it's issued from the court on a nice piece of paper. It's just that you're legally separated. The next step is the court say, under our act, you have 8 weeks, because it is put by God, that's a vow, it's a covenant that is taken very seriously under the law, not to be entered into lightly or broken lightly. They give you some time to think about it. And if you think about it and you're ready, after the 6 weeks, you get to cool it out and feel like to be away. If you don't come back, then you can apply, either the person who filed the petition or the respondent can apply for what they call the decree absolute. And that's the paper that means you're done. But I did have a case a few years ago where a man went to a lawyer with his friend. I think this lawyer's law book stopped from when he must have went and leave law school. He actually was the MC at the wedding. The lawyer, he had filed a divorce for him, and he got remarried. 18 years later, he and his wife are having some issues, and I think they're looking now to migrate. Papers filed, going away. So 18 years later now, post this wedding, married before, gets remarried. He got married, unfortunately, with this lawyer's direction, with only a decree nisi. Let's say he got married in May. In May, he was only a decree nisi, not absolute. He got the absolute, you would say, in the October. You know how all the stories get dig up whenever you file for in foreign, right? So that you have to show that, you say where you're married. Your marriage certificate says, where you're married, single, bachelor, spinster, widower, input, divorce,
All right.
So the papers are asked for, send us proof of these documents. When your marriage certificate says you get married in May of 1987, but your decree absolute is in October, what does that mean?
You're still married when you got married the second time.
So you are what they call a bigamist.
All right.
And that marriage is invalid.
We don't like the bigamist.
So you have to apply. I had the distinction of having to apply to the court for a dissolution of a marriage and a nullity, to declare it a nullity, because of course the papers exist, they're there. But he got some bad advice first. Oh, just put in the paper. The Jamaican thing they call gazette you. You write in the paper, I no longer, this woman is not my wife. But guess what? What in our law existed was she had been with him since the October of 87 for 18 years. So from that October, what happened? Time began to run for her to be just what? A spouse. So the criminal offense of bigamy had to be evaded. So I had to do all sorts of theatrics. Happily for me, the man was out of Jamaica, and I had to do what they call a video link application. Before video link was a thing like now. And he was away, so the police couldn't come for him. And we were able to get the application done to declare the marriage a nullity, because at the time he was not fully divorced. But you can make, and most of us men only remarry when it's time to marry somebody else. And so in the rush, and we don't tell the woman we're going to marry that, in fact, it never goes. So I can't forget having to get a decree absolute for somebody on a Friday evening to get married on a Saturday morning. Yes. And divorce is not my mainstay, guys, but for my sins, if something has happened in this world that can be complicated, I've had to do it. But these are true stories. So it's something for you to think about. So don't remember the 2 pieces of paper. If you want to get one, there's a problem. You have to get the other one. So don't make any definitive plans until you've done that.
Wow. Wow.
Shane have a
Okay.
long question.
Man, Shane, you have a long question here. Wow. Mother has a property, she died. You are the one that lives there for over 30 years, paying the taxes. The government comes in, takes the house, and I started the paperwork for the property. Oh dear, my little brother stopped the paperwork, got a
And get
lawyer.
a family lawyer. We signed to take back the house. My little brother, out of 10 kids, he take half the money. How can I get some advice? Shane, there's a lot. That's what you call it. This one has to be digested.
Yes, yeah.
Shane, you look like you need to go find a lawyer to go and talk to. What you've shared here sounds like a lot of complications that I really couldn't dissect for you fully, but effectively, the highlights I can pick out for you here are that whatever exists, if it has not been done properly, you'd have to go back to documentation and what you'd have signed. You speak to signing papers. If you sign certain things, the government is able to take back property after 30 years. Property, somebody I think asked earlier, what happens if you don't leave anything for anybody? There are gifts that they call bona vacantia, and they go back to the state. And usually 30 years is your time limit. So property, for example, we only have an interest in land in Jamaica. You don't own it. And the law, that's why the government can acquire your land if it needs to. So you may remember Constant Spring Road, there was a lot of land that was acquired through compulsory acquisition by the government. It's because you only have an interest in land. It's not yours entirely. The government can reclaim it if it needs it for whatever purpose. And similarly, if you die and the land is not claimed, it can revert back to the government, what they call the crown generally. Now, in the circumstances, for you, Shane, you sound like you need a consultation with somebody to go through this in a clear enough way for you. I'm not even sure if you have all the facts distilled here for us to give you any proper guidance.
Proper guidance, yeah. And what kind of attorney you think maybe would?
He needs to find somebody who knows about estates and property work. He also can go to a place like I don't know if the property was what you call it now, with a title or not. But there are some new facilities that exist, and maybe here, Karen, there's something we didn't discuss before, but there's a place called the Land Administrative Management Division. So people who have properties that don't have title on them, you can go now and at a cheaper cost be able to get a title for property. So for example, there are people who land in Jamaica is registered and land is unregistered. So many people own what they call a deed, where you show that I lived there, for my father had it, and then I get it, and so on. So go down the line, generate family land, that sort of thing. There's now a new improvement in our law to make this much more accessible and much cheaper. And so they can go to the Land Administrative Management Division. But any good land-based lawyer, there's a lady, Gloria Brown, we hear on the radio as a program, very informative. There are people like that who specialize. Like I said, Shane's story sounds modeled to me. I can't pick out everything.
Right.
But it sounds like whatever happened, somebody took a lot more than he thinks they should have. But it all depends what he did in the background. But yeah, a good lawyer is going to be important who knows the area. So if the person needs to know about land law and estates. That's the kind of lawyer.
One final question here. Well, it's not so much a question. If you could speak to it, Ashley was saying when a property is transferred to kids, there could be issues with them purchasing their first home through NHT.
Yes,
so
definitely. NHT is a benefit to first-time homeowners. So what happens in those cases is, and it's not uncommon, because there was a point where it was thought that this was a good way to work. What you do is that child has to they have to file a declaration with NHT to show that they were just put on the title for security or convenience, but they never really had any interest in it. It remains their parents. But the pros are, you're now getting what? You're getting $5.5 million, I think, or $6.5 million from NHT. If you have the benefit of property that is in your name, you and your sister, for example, and it's $30 million, hey, that's a greater head start than NHT money. So, the pros and cons have to be managed, but it can be something. It's not insurmountable, but it certainly is it is a hindrance without more, unless you can justify or show the NHT why you should still get your benefit for your contributions. But if you check the last live, guys, remember that even though you may not have the benefit of the home loan, you still get the contribution refunds.
Yeah. All
So your money
right.
is not in vain.
Good stuff. And yes, I think Marcia asking a question about forensic accountants in Jamaica. They exist, right?
They exist. They exist.
Yeah,
They exist.
yeah, they do. They do. All righty. Well. This has been an awesome discussion. I think we got some great information. I am not watching what's going on the news, guys. Them declare a winner yet for the election. I don't know. Let us know in the chat.
The Democrats have the Senate majority.
Oh, okay. So we know that already. All right, cool. So great. I guess we'll just continue to watch. As I said, guys, we're sorting out our own affairs tonight, so it's all good.
No, we don't have it yet. They're on their way. They're on their way.
Okay, yes. So thank you. Yes, and I think Ashley's point is great. Get a good lawyer for everything. I love that, Ashley. A great way. I mean, Stuart, do you have any final nugget? Well, before you go to your final nugget, I just wanted to share just a couple of quick housekeeping items, guys. Again, thank you for joining us for tonight's conversation. We are recording this. We've been recording it as we always do. Every single time we do this, we record these discussions. And of course, having recorded it, we put it up on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, Periscope after it's over, so you can watch it, watch the replay, take your notes, share it with anybody, your friends, family, loved ones who may find this information useful, and anything you may have missed, you can rewatch. So we're happy to have you rewatch. Please do so. We're going to be back here next week, Tuesday, with another awesome episode. Stay tuned because it's going to be interesting as usual. We're moving into the holiday season, so we're going to be having quite a few episodes that support conversations around how we can really maximize and optimize the upcoming holiday season. It's been a challenging year called 2020, and we still find that there is a lot to be grateful for, and we want to focus on how we can get ourselves, our loved ones, and our financial affairs in order as we move into the holiday season and close out 2020. So stay tuned to our social media pages to see what our next topic is. And of course, we thank you for joining. I mean, Stuart, what is the final nugget that you'd like to share? If there's one key takeaway that you would have everybody kind of come away from this discussion with, what would that be?
Don't consider planning for worst case scenarios to be pessimistic or morbid, because trouble don't set like the rain we have been experiencing in Jamaica now. And the worst thing you can ever be is ill prepared or leave loved ones in a state where they have to be fighting to secure themselves in the way that you would have wanted them to be secure. So put aside the old wife, the old superstitions, put aside that rubbish and think about what you need to do should something happen. Be prepared. Be prepared. Be prepared financially. Be prepared to manage the emotional issues. So utilize the things at your disposal. Life insurance for your discretion, life insurance for your hedging of risk and your time, because it's a great tool. Make your intentions clear, manage your secrets, and remember, when you're gone, think about the people you're leaving and don't allow their grief to be compounded by stress and strain that could have been avoided had you not been ignorant or arrogant.
Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, you want to ensure that your true wishes are carried out.
Correct. And you also want to be sure that when things go south, that you aren't left with the short end of the stick. So eyes wide open. Love is wonderful. You're happy, but remember, I gave that example the last time. Some scenarios are often too good to be true, and it doesn't last forever. The only thing that lasts forever, they say, is salvation. So remember that in the event of a problem, protect yourself. Think about what can happen. What's the worst case? I tell people all the time, going into any relationship, if you go into a business, you examine the risks and the benefits. You're going into a marriage or a relationship of long term. What's the worst that can happen? and how will I feel after that? And make those plans, because nothing is new. All the examples I've given you guys are not out of a storybook. They're real life situations, and there are many more I could share, but it means that it is not uncommon to us. It is a common experience. So therefore, what does it mean? It could happen to you. You don't have to learn by making the mistake. You can learn from other people's mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Guys, thank you. I see the thanks coming in. Can we get our usual virtual round of applause for our guest tonight, Stuart? He was our only guest, so we work him hard again. And guys, of course, thanks, Stuart. We really appreciate you. We appreciate your time, your effort, your energy. Yes, you're sipping the water because your throat dry because you've been talking for the last hour and a half. Thank you so much again for your time. Of course, we have to thank our admin team, our marketing team in the back, who, of course, every week does all of the hard work to put these lives together. Thank you, ladies. JMMB Marketing, you continue to be awesome, partnering with our viewers every week, standing for the greatness of all by bringing these conversations every week. And of course, we have to big up all of our viewers. Yes, I still know Carisha, Kadia, RQ, Sophia. Oh my goodness, Richardo, Shanique, all my regular people, my new people, seen some great names here. Val, Big Ray, what up, what up? Love it, Marcia, Sharika, man. You guys are awesome. I mean, all the names just keep flying up, flying up, flying up. Thank you so much for joining, guys. And remember, join us again next week. Share this awesome content with anyone who you think could benefit, and keep coming back because we're here for you. We started these discussions as are part of the COVID-19 pandemic to support people with providing the information they need to navigate. But this has now become something so much bigger. Yes, COVID will probably be around for a little while, but guess what? Life is still going on. Things are happening, and we're here to bring you all of the information you need to manage your money and manage your life. And that's what we're about at JMMB. So thank you, everybody. Everybody stay safe. Yes. Jams 10:40. Wash your hands, people. Watch the protocols. Stay safe. COVID don't cancel. We're still trying to stay safe. Everybody keep well. Love each other. Support each other. And walk good until we see you next time. Good night, everybody.